All right, 1:30 now here at the KFYR Plus News Desk. More Americans are juggling multiple jobs just to get by, with inflation driving side hustles from optional now to pretty much essential. Workplace expert Sherry Yellen now joins us to explain what employees should know before balancing extra income with their full-time job. Sherry, welcome to the News Desk. Thank you for your time today.
Oh, well, thank you. It's good to be here.
So, when more than half Americans say that they can't cover the essentials without a side job, what does that tell you about today's workforce reality?
The reality is there's so many complex variables coming together all at once. So if you're feeling that way, you're definitely not alone. We've got not only with changes in the economy, but there's just a lot of changes in the workplace in general with new generations coming in. We've definitely got AI, all those things and all the pressures that people are feeling. And we look at everything really through the lens of how does the brain work best, because that's what's producing those ideas at work and keeping you balanced in your life. And I would just really caution people that if they're picking up those side hustles, that they're paying attention to the fatigue, or they're paying attention to the extra stress that it might be causing. Now, that doesn't always happen, because oftentimes burnout isn't just a matter of doing more, it's about doing more that matters. So, some of the people that we work with, they're seeing their side hustle is actually something that's very meaningful to them. And
Hmm.
it actually helps them with their full time job, because it gives them an opportunity to maybe do something that is an interest or a hobby, or something that they want to pursue outside of their current workplace. But the key message here is to really pay attention, to be aware, to pay attention to what we call those yellow lights of your body telling you when you need to slow down, of your body telling you when you need to get additional sleep, how to work more efficiently. Those yellow lights are so important to pay attention to.
Okay, so if you have a side hustle, should you tell your boss or should you not tell your boss?
And that's an interesting change that we're seeing, because, in the last several years, you signed a document that said that you wouldn't have a side hustle, but we're seeing that change more and more. I'm of the thought that if there's a policy in that company and you've committed to that policy, that you honor that. And if you
Hmm.
do want to start that side hustle, that you're able to have that candid, open conversation with your employer, specifically if that's in the company policy. And some of the folks that we work with, you can't have a side hustle that's in competition to the field that you're working in. So sometimes there are nuances to that, but just important to have the conversation.
Yeah, I mean, let's say that your side hustle. Okay, so I do have a side job, but it's a job that I've had for 20 plus years, and I love doing it. I'm a butcher. I cut up cows on the weekends, right?
That's
And
awesome.
it's in a shop. It's in a meat shop, and we have a counter, customer counter, and very busy during the weekends on Saturday and Sunday. So, and I like that, and I like interacting with the young kids that are there. So I enjoy that. But conversely, if you have a side hustle that a lot of people are doing right now as maybe an influencer, as that does that really matter? Is that really a job though, Sherry? I mean, being an influencer, you're just sitting at home or wherever you might be, just influencing people's decisions.
Well, another example of how right now in the workplace things may be fuzzier than ever, because we also, when you think about that, you want to represent the brand, especially if you've got a full-time job and you've committed to this employer to representing an image, representing the brand. I would just make sure that what you're doing on social media isn't going to do anything that tarnishes the
Hmm.
brand of the company that you are representing. That footprint doesn't go away even if you leave that employer. And believe me, people that are hiring today are searching every form of social media on people before they're called in for those interviews or made those hires. And so, uh, again, your example is such a phenomenal example of a side hustle that actually gives you purpose and meaning, and it's not something that's draining and burnout. And that's really what we want, if that is in fact, one that doesn't come in conflict with company policy. I
Right,
would just
right.
say definitely social media presence. Uh, just remembering that when you do sign on to work with an employer, you do honor their brand.
Yeah, what's Sherry? What's one of the biggest mistakes employees make when they, that could put their main job at risk?
Yeah. Well, one is if there is in fact a policy, right? A policy that you can't have that. We're seeing more employers take those kinds of policies and make changes to them because in many ways you want that entrepreneur mindset. You want your employees
Hmm.
to think like an owner, and oftentimes that is part of hiring someone with that mindset is just knowing that they are starting their own businesses, their own side hustle. You want to be sure that that's not interfering clearly with the quality of work or the deliverables that you've committed to with your employer. So we're seeing a lot more flexibility with on the employer side. With the employee side, I think it's so important, especially if you're doing a lot of social media kinds of things. Again, you're representing the brand. You're not doing anything that crosses boundaries. So let's say you're not shooting video footage in your office to promote your brand. Believe it or not, we have seen that. So it's just as much as possible remembering all the stakeholders that you've committed to and the kinds of deliverables that you've committed to, and you do that in a way that honors the values of those.
One of the things I think that bosses of not only your main gig but the side gig would have to worry about would be a burnout, right? You're not giving
Yeah.
100% at this job. And then if you're so tired, you're probably not giving 100% at your side job as well. So 65% of people report burnout. What are some early burnout signs that you're seeing in folks?
Yeah, and I think there's responsibility on both sides of this. I would say we're working a lot with the leaders we work with right now of reinforcing the importance of setting clear expectations, of setting clear performance indicators. What am I responsible for? What does winning look like in this job? So that everyone is clear about that. And if you're not seeing that met, that you're having those conversations sooner rather than later. So important on the part of the employer to be very clear on, what success looks like and what the deliverables are. But then also on the employee side, burnout again is not always that I'm taking on more. It's am I getting purpose and meaning out of that? So when I feel like I'm doing a lot of different tasks that really doesn't fill my cup, so to speak, that's where we really start to see burnout. And so paying attention to those early signs of when you're not following through with what you've committed to, when you're not available to the people that are depending upon you, when you're not meeting those deliverables that have been clearly defined by your employer. So those are some external things, but what people can pay attention to a little bit more internally, is fatigue. Are you getting adequate sleep? Your diet
Hmm.
becomes even more important when you're taking on more responsibilities, and paying attention to that, because what we know is that you can accrue a debt, so to speak. Like with a sleep, you can accrue a sleep debt that you can't just pay it back in one day. And that starts to add up and it starts to impact our health. And, some of the latest statistics around stress and health is that about 80 to 85% of our health expenditures in this country are stress related. So we have to look in the mirror sometimes and ask, how am I creating a situation where I'm not showing up to anyone as my best self, but also recognizing those signs earlier rather than later?
If if most people see side hustles as their financial backup, how should employers respond to this new normal now?
I think that they do have to think about it. So, I would say, first of all, on the employer side, to pay attention to all of the changes that are happening right now in our world and in our workplace. I know it's real easy to move into business as usual and status quo, but things are changing, and adaptability is the key leadership skill right now. The other thing is, if you want a bigger talent pool, you may have to be a little bit more flexible with some of your policies. In the past, it might have been zero tolerance on any kind of side hustle, but today there's competition for talent. So it
Mhm.
may require you to, be a little bit more flexible with that. But in the end, it's really about transparency. Is the policy clear? Are you having those conversations with people when you bring them in, or even if they've been an employee for a long time? Having that kind of relationship and the conversations that need to be happening, and it's about being able to confront what needs to be confronted in a very clear and direct way.
What should smart employers be doing if half of their workforce is working extra jobs?
Well, I would be evaluating if, I'd take a look at a lot of things. I think these are opportunities not to criticize or judge those people. I think this is feedback for us to step back and look at, are we competitive in the market? Is what we're at, are we paying people an equivalent to what they're delivering regarding the value that they're delivering? The other question is always, so what? Is there a negative impact of that? If I'm not seeing a negative impact, then maybe it's just something that it's a belief that I have, but it's not really worth uh, anything that requires changing. So all the question, so what, should be at the front and foremost. How is this impacting the quality of work? Or am I seeing a difference in morale? Am I seeing, an increase in a decrease in attendance? If I'm not seeing any of those negative impacts, then it's quite possible that nothing does need to change. But what we do want employers to pay attention to the trends, to pay attention to it and ask, what's this showing up to tell me? What's the feedback here? And do we need to act on it? Or do we need to maybe adjust how we've always done things?
Is there a rule that everyone should follow to protect their main paycheck?
Yeah, I think it's just always recognizing that you to to honor what you've promised to deliver for that employer, but also remembering that you are your security and to be continuously adaptable. And adaptability means always learning and growing and staying curious for sure and getting feedback, but sometimes it equally so it means unlearning. It may be, what are some of the things that are not serving us anymore or serving me anymore that I need to let go of? So self-awareness is really critical on everybody's part. And oddly enough, most people think they're self-aware, but the
Hmm.
researchers show that very few are. So paying attention to that, paying attention to those the feedback that you're getting in your life, and then honoring and following through with what you've committed to do.
Final question, Sherry. Do you see side hustles as a temporary survival tool or as a permanent shift in how we Americans are going to look at work?
I see it as a permanent shift. And one of the reasons is because so many of the people that we work with, their side hustle is something that gives them an opportunity to exercise other talents and strengths that maybe they aren't able to do in their day-to-day job, which is actually beneficial to what they do in their everyday job if they're getting meaning and purpose and value from that. And I think that having that entrepreneur kind of owner mindset is beneficial oftentimes into both sides, both the side hustle and what they're doing in the day to day. So I think that's definitely a shift because we have a generation coming in who want choices and they want options and they're looking for freedom. And if it's not impacting again those deliverables in any kind of negative way, then maybe there's lots of wins that can come out of that. But I see side hustles as being a lasting trend.
I do too. I do too. Sherry Yellen, workplace and leadership expert. Nice to see you. Thank you so much for your insight today.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Have a great weekend. All right, it is now 1:45 the hour. We'll take a break. We're back here with more news next on KFYR Plus.